All right, let's talk about some more Arc Raiders as the new map, Stella Montis, is here. And I've played it for about a week at this point, and I do have some thoughts on it. And I think this will be a good follow up to a lot of the other Arc Raider videos that I have done. Arc Raider? Arc Raiders? I'm sure I said that right. Anyways, to unlock the Stella Montis map, we as a community had to put forth some items. It was mostly like plastic parts, kind of cheap stuff that you use for base crafting materials so that you could get merits and help towards rebuilding the tunnels that would take us north of the Blue Gate to ultimately unlock the map. It was unlocked a little too quickly, or it was like verging on getting unlocked too quickly, so the devs actually went back and increased the amount of items that were needed to unlock the map, which makes sense to me. I think these are the types of things that'll get tuned as they continue on and continue to have live service events, especially for big things like map reveals. But within a day, even with the extra materials required, we unlocked the map and were able to go to Stella Montis. And those merits that we got for donating items turned out to not be like a currency that you could buy stuff with, but just an additional point path for the live event, which I think is going to end in a few days from now. And if you go through that and get experience during this time, you'll unlock a separate chain of items and tools you can use to explore Stella Montis. What is Stella Montis? Stella Montis is a facility located in this very wintry, mountainous region at the very north of the map that we currently have. It appears to be another map that is focused around the Exodus era, where humanity was building these massive spaceships to escape the collapse of the ecological systems on Earth prior to all of the evil robot stuff happening. So it is interesting to see that they're still positioning a lot of the areas that we're investigating around that period, maybe further indicating that it's kind of pivotal, key moment to the story of what we're experiencing. But taking a step back from some of the narrative stuff that I'll talk about later, it is a big indoor map, which I think is a really great change of pace from everything else that we have in Ark. While we do have these large facilities or the underground tunnels area on Blue Gate, or the departure building on Spaceport, and even some of the interior areas on Dam, kind of in the main control building, do give you a taste of like this very close quarters kind of combat. I feel like generally the encounters that I'm having, majority of them at least, are happening in these big open spaces, which are pretty abundant and consistent across all the maps in reality. So even Buried City, which I think has a lot more interior spaces, the interiors are generally so small that you're still usually engaging with the Ark and other raiders, either building to building or building to outside or outside the building or something like this. So it's cool to have a pretty solid change of pace where it's just an entire interior facility that you get to explore. Now, the first thing that I think they're going to have to tweak, it's a bit too populated. It seems like there are a lot of players, and I think that the spawns have been something that people have been kind of feeling out since the game launched. Obviously, having these spawn points active throughout the round, you have people spawning in at the 30-minute mark, the 25 or 22-minute mark, the 19-minute mark. I think that's kind of where it cuts off. I don't think you're getting new people in at the 10, 15 minutes left in the round. But because this is how people populate the map, you will have circumstances where people are going to run into other raiders, inevitably, who are either intentionally or unintentionally spawn camping them. And because this is such a close space, and now everybody has their level up, so they got their mobility kind of maxed out. Maybe that's a contributing factor, or at least they understand the movement better than when the game first launched. It is very, very likely, especially I found, like if you're coming in solo, that you could spawn in, and if you're really in the later portion of the match or a few minutes into the match, you're probably going to be one or two corners away from encountering another player. Now, generally, something that I think is apparent to everybody who's played any other extraction shooters, Ark is the friendliest extraction shooter on the market, so you do have way more success in like talking to people, teaming up to fight PvE enemies, but yeah, you are going to be encountering people at kind of a weird pace for joining a multiplayer match, especially in extraction shooter where there is a little bit more intensity with what you're bringing in. But obviously, kind of countered by the free loadouts. They also introduced 2 new arc, I believe, the Shredder, which is actually on the Stella Montis map, which is this floating drone robot that shoots a shrapnel if it gets too close to you, or shotgun shell thing. It's pretty cool. It's like a massive explosion. And once again, another element that works really well on these interior spaces. And they also introduced the Matriarch, which is another giant bug-looking enemy, kind of like the Queen, that is not on Stella Montis, but can appear randomly on the other maps that we have. It's pretty sick, too, and they do change up quite a few things in terms of the combat that you're getting from it, which I didn't necessarily expect. I didn't know how they were going to kind of shift things up from these bigger fights, like with the Queen in particular. I understand the difference between Bombardier, Bastion, Rocketeer. Like, those are the larger arc, and I get how those are all separate fights, but the Queen has such a pretty, varied moveset, with the mortar rounds that they have, the laser beam, the EMP pulse, the kind of machine gun burst or laser burst it has. So kind of cool that they were able to introduce some elements with this Matriarch that I wasn't really expecting. It has a giant flashbang grenade that is pretty jarring. It has gas grenades and homing missiles. I've only encountered it 3 times, I think now. I think I encountered it once playing today and 2 times earlier this week. So not something that I'm running into that much. And honestly, I've been doing the Stella Montis map so much, try to get a feel for it, that I haven't encountered it because it doesn't spawn there. So I am interested in seeing kind of how those fights play out more so, but I'm going to need more time to kind of draw any conclusion about it as an actual arc enemy. But visually very interesting, and the kind of arms that it has as at its disposal is also fun to fight against. Getting back to the map itself and talking about some of the environmental storytelling details, like I said, this is another facility geared towards spaceflight, or at least human survival, seemingly. They have these massive loading bays, rocket assembly areas, and even like a rover testing area. So maybe the humans that left Earth are hanging out on the moon or something. That'd be kind of sick. We also see a cultural archive wing, a seed vault, and a medical research wing. It seems like these were all geared towards survival, either here on Earth or elsewhere in the stars, wherever the Exodus took them. And it seems like the storage areas are largely for like these antique items or, seeds, high value things that they weren't going to be able to take with them into space. And so maybe when they come back, they would all be here, not in a state of disrepair as we in the arcs have now put it into. This could be a bit of further insight into how much time and preparation people had before the Exodus, which also kind of indicates that there was more time for a division to grow between the people who were leaving Earth and the people who were going to be left behind, which I do ultimately at this point think is where the story is going. We also got a poster advertising the Lance-like androids as these helper workforce kind of things. I think this is a good way to continue to pull on the threads that they kind of introduced in the initial quest lines and our exploration of the story in the beginning, being at least around Lance, centered around his existence as an enigma in Speranza, where we don't really understand how this robot is talking, thinking, feeling, why he's not attacking us, where he came from, or what he truly intends to do, and it doesn't seem like Lance really understands that either. As you probably know, if you've seen my other ARC videos, my biggest kind of criticism has been the quest system, which I don't think offers progression either in the story or like character progression. It doesn't give you experience or skills or valuable items. And I had talked about them potentially kind of expanding the questing system and providing something that was a better experience in additional content, with obviously the caveat that I wasn't assuming that any kind of meaningful changes were going to be done to the quests within this launch of Stella Montis, because it's so close to its initial release date that I'm assuming all of this work was basically done prior to the launch, and there was probably finishing things, or they wanted to have an event near the start so you can get a feel for how to incorporate that into the long-term lifespan of the game. With that being said, the quests are also disappointing here. My assumption was that we would get around 10 to 15 quests in this map, just because we had 63 quests spread out across 4 maps earlier, so I assumed that it would be a similar amount of quest content here that would see us going to all of the unique areas that it has and exploring, some of the plot threads that were set up in the initial quest line in terms of getting the band back together, starting a good raider resistance against the Ark, building a stronger Toledo and Speranza and stuff like this. But it doesn't really deliver that. We got 3 quests. If I said that already yet, I don't know. But we got 3 quests. The first one, I got quite excited because it was Lance asking us to go and look at the android bodies that were scattered throughout Stella Montis, which obviously, like I was talking about earlier, this is kind of the plot thread that is very interesting in terms of the traitor characters, which really aren't all that compelling. Lance, I think, is the one who stands to be in a position that I think could be cool, like, talking about a robot that is seemingly sapient in a lot of ways, and how is it existing in this society and why, whatever, right? So I was excited. We're going to go around, investigate these things. We got to search their bodies, see what they were up to. And basically it goes nowhere. We take it back to Lance. He said something, I don't have the exact recording, but something literally along the lines of like, all right, keep a lookout kind of deal. We get 2 more quests, which see us like going to, I think, loot one of the crates and investigate some other area and, maybe break into like a security sector. Nothing very compelling, nothing that moves the plot forward or really shines a lot of light into Stella Montis. We're getting more from the kind of posters we're seeing on the walls, the assembly areas, and kind of what kind of technology they were working on here, about what this facility actually did and its place in the larger world of Arc Raiders than we're getting from the quest lines at all. And so not a lot to look forward to in that realm. I do think it's going to be something they change up. I do think also that some of the backlash about the voice actors not being actual recorded lines for the quest, I think that's something that they might even change at this point. Embark has been pretty receptive to changes that people have wanted, and another thing that just happened is they were listening to the feedback about the prices for the skins, and so they dropped the shop prices down for the skins that people were buying. I think there was something else as well, but I think they're listening. I think the point is, like, clearly this game has been very successful financially for them, so they're probably in a position to really do right by the players at this point. It seems like that's their intention. So I do think maybe in the future things could get a little more compelling on the narrative side, and that could be introduced into the quest. But if you're, kind of considering jumping into Arc Raiders at this point, or you're interested in the stuff going on in Stella Montis, I would say it's cool to walk around the map. It's cool to kind of draw some connections to some things we see in other locations, maybe, and what it says about the larger world and how they reacted to the collapse and, the Ark arriving, and what kind of assets are available to the potential people left, yada, yada, yada. That is there, and it's compelling, but this isn't going to do anything for you on the quest side of things. Overall, Stella Montis is a great change of pace as far as gameplay goes. Some tweaking, more Arc, less players might make it feel a little bit better. But for the moment, I'm having a blast running around, exploring the map, fighting in this more confined space against Arc and players. Also, if you just want to let out some steam in a game that is largely very friendly and kind of almost anti-PvP, like if you're running a solo game and you kill somebody and another raider sees that, you're going to have hell to pay. They're going to be like, I saw what you did, I'm coming to get you, which is fun. It's cool that the community is like that. But if you want to jump in, blow off some steam, engage in some of the PvP combat that's available in Arc, definitely dropping in with a shotgun into Stella Montis has been a good avenue for getting some quick PvP fights on, and also building up the experience. I feel like I have maybe like 30 or 40 raider kills. Maybe that was prior to me doing a lot of the Stella Montis stuff. And so we're talking about, 60, 50 hours maybe of playtime prior to the Stella Montis map coming. And that's genuinely not a lot of kills. I'm pretty pacifist. I'm pretty chill. I'm here to loot. I'm here to do all the quests. I'm here to like get my workshop stuff on. If you're pressing me, I'll press you, kind of thing. And I also don't know if the raider kills were necessarily like tracking all the time, because I do know I was playing with Sado for maybe the first like 2 or 3 days after launch or something like that, and I had checked because we were going through and looking at all the menus, and it still had said 0 at that point, and I knew that wasn't right. So maybe it's not tracking all of them or something weird's happening, but it's not a PvP heavy game. And so sometimes when you get in a PvP encounter, it could be like 3 or 4 matches since you had that happen. And so to have an area that is more close quarters and you can actually get into these gunfights and get some reps in, do some warm up, it does make it feel like you have a better chance and you're not like flashbanged, 6 rounds into your play session and you're getting shot at for the first time by a player and you're like, oh god, I gotta, kind of lock in and fight right now. So I enjoyed it. I think it's a great map, and I think it'll add a good overall quality to locations that we have available to us. I think this will probably be my last video about Ark for a while. Maybe when this season ends, if kind of they do some additional content that's compelling to me, I might jump back in and make some videos about it. I'm definitely going to be playing it and streaming it over on Twitch if you guys want to check that out or hang out. I'm sure I'll be, jumping in then. But in terms of making videos about it, I think I'm about done for the moment. And like I said, when that next big content drop is available for it, I might pop back in and see what I think about where they're going with the narrative and the kind of changes that they make. But for now, I think I got a pretty good understanding of it, and I'll just be enjoying it as a fun with friends multiplayer extravaganza. But if you do, for some reason, want to hear me yap even more about Arc Raiders, I am on the latest episode of the Arcaholics podcast, which is hosted by Gecko. So definitely check out his channel, and I'll leave a link to that episode once it's posted either today or tomorrow, I think, either in the description or pinned comment or something if you want to check that out. But I appreciate you. Let me know your thoughts on Stella Montis, and I'll see you guys later. All right, have a good one. Bye.